Hello everyone and welcome to a video I wasn't expecting to make until I saw just how prolific Johan was this week at responding to comments. So, on Wednesday we had the absolutely awesome, I think, Tinto Talks number 22, the concept of... Wait, no, that's a different one. Basically, we went and we learned about the combat system in EU5, and from what I can see, generally it's come over incredibly well. Of course, there's a lot of questions, a lot of clarifications needed, and as such, well, a lot of questions were asked, and Johan answered so many. I have, in the past, posted on Twitter saying, oh my god, I can't believe there was 5 pages of responses from the devs for this, this forum post, this dev diary. And I'm continually impressed that there is that much back and forth in answering questions the community has. I think that's amazing. Yeah, I think maybe Johan outdid himself this week, because we have 11 pages of pure, unadulterated developer responses. I keep using the word prolific, but goddamn if it doesn't completely fit the entire vibe of what we're talking about here. He was absolutely, undoubtedly, unequivocally prolific in responding to the community, and mad props to him for that. It's fantastic. Before we get into the responses, though, I did question what these guys were in the video that I made, and Johan responded to me in Discord and told me that they are early 16th century Hungarian hussars of the Black Army. He had to go and ask one of his producers, or he asked his producer what it was, just so he could answer that for me. And I think that's really cool. So thank you, Johan, for finding out so that you tell me. Love that. There is one more thing that we need to address before we get into it, and that is, if you could subscribe to the channel. I know it's standard YouTube gump. Asking for subs is annoying and boring, and but just click the button and then it all goes away. It's fine. Right, let's get into the responses. On my video, I titled it as such as well. I made the grave error, the absolute stinker of an error of saying that we had 11 ticks per day, because I didn't take into account the fact that, 8 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock in the evening were both counted as well. So I just assumed incorrectly that there were 11 ticks per day, and I thought that was very strange, so I kept going on about it. That is obviously not true at all. There are 12 ticks per day, and I flubbed pretty hard on that one. I flubbed pretty hard on that one. I even had planned to make a little YouTube short about, the turn it up to 11, that thing. I flubbed. I apologize. I get things wrong sometimes. But math hard. Duncan here also asking about 11 ticks per day. It's 12. It is 12. And as I reply, SMH, imagine anyone thinking it's 11. Not sure anyone is that quite that bad at maths, and apparently, hi, that me. I am in fact that bad at maths. In my defense, doing maths on camera makes you 78% worse at maths. Is a known phenomenon. It's a known fact, and I will not be taking questions at this time. Anyway, moving on to meat and potatoes of the dev diary and such. The chance increases for every hour of combat. Confirmation that PC Project Caesar ticks in units smaller than days. Yes, we have 12 ticks per day. However, there was a lot of worry about this. For example, people were calculating how many ticks there are going to be in the entire game. If we have 12 ticks per day, 365 ticks per year. Not sure if leap years are included yet. That's actually answered in this thread. I didn't pull it up, but Johan basically said that he wasn't sure if leap years were going to be involved or not, which is wild to me. But 365 days per year, 12 ticks, and then 500 years, it comes to over 2 million ticks. And then when you bear in mind that the likes of EU4, Victoria 3, Hearts of Iron are all in the 100,000s range, it made a lot of people worried that the game was going to be essentially too frickin' long. But I think we're going to be somewhat happier about that when we learn a bit more at some of these questions that are going to be answered, because that is brought up quite a bit. We'll get to that when we get to it. I probably shouldn't have went into it quite so early. Don't worry about that. Will be an artificial province limit like in HOI4? No, pretty sure they don't have one. That's awesome. The ability to add more provinces, more locations, more whatever to the map. Fantastic for modders. And Benar can go ham and be totally happy. Does this mean you can use different leaders on the mid and reserve and flanks, like in March of the Eagles? No, there's only one leader per army. As sub-leaders add quite a lot more characters to the game. That's fine in a war game like March of the Eagles or Hearts of Iron. And then talking about different tactics. Tactics like in Imperator, you had your frontal assault, your steadfast, all the different animals and whatever. It was something that had an imperative, even after 5 iterations, it sucked. I didn't like it, but I don't think it sucked. I thought there was space maybe for an update to it, but I am more happy that it is not going to be in than if we got an update to it. Because essentially, battles will be over quicker. Even though we're having this, increased ticks per day, battles will still be over quicker. And the ability to change tactics on the fly or change tactics for reinforcements and such is just, it's not engaging gameplay. It's a high skill expression for sure to be able to change tactics on the fly for your reinforcements to take over and use that new tactic. But it's too high level really for an average game. And in single player, it forces you to basically pause the game as soon as the battle started, check things, change things, then unpause, and it just breaks up the flow of the game too much, and I think that is a negative to the game. So I'm glad that tactics will not be a part. It was an interesting concept, but it just didn't work in practice, so yeah, RIP. If I recall correctly, discipline works here similar to EU4. In that case, seems that having good commander will be really crucial for winning battles. Yes. But all of the stats that we have for the commanders are going to be important. And I'll just pop this over here so we can see the stats again. Admin ability gives you various stats. Diplo gives you various stats. Military gives you various stats as well. There was somebody who pointed out that this 49 going to 11.27, this would bring 100 military ability to be 23 discipline. Which is kind of silly, but that was some kind of typo, and Johan is working on it. There's another thing in here that is, I think, even more egregious than a simple typo, and that is possible frontage. This is by far the strongest stat in this list, and Johan has recognized that and is looking at that. This will be nerfed. Possible frontage, imagine it like naval engagement width, which was, especially in multiplayer, completely overtuned, overscaled, oppressive modifier that basically meant that whoever had the highest one generally ended up being the winner. Meant that more of your boats could attack your enemy's boats than could be attacked in return. Outnumbering your enemy was just so insane in EU4. So frontage here is gonna have to be balanced quite heavily, and I think Johan goes into it in a future comment about how this is getting the heavy nerf bat because it is somewhat insane. It's too high level, too strong. How long does your average battle last, given the increased ticks? As long as an EU4, shorter or longer. About 20% less ticks right now than EU4. I did go over this in my Wednesday video, but I want to kind of reiterate and go over it just a little bit more. How long does a battle last in EU4 is like kind of up in the air. Early game battles will last a shorter amount of time unless you've got a lot of troops, and in which case battles will last longer. How is that really any way to say how long battles last? Are we talking if we have the same number of troops on each side, and in EU4 as in EU5, so say it's a 10,000 men versus 10,000 men in both battles, is that what the 20% less time is going to be? So we're going to spend 20% less time fighting the EU5 battle? Is that a good thing as well? I'm not sure. I very much disagree with the people who say the battle should be instant, right? I think that is a completely moronic desire for the game. And the music just started again. Okay, I think it's a moronic idea. I think that is very much a desire born out of, I want realism above gameplay. And gameplay has to still come first. At the end of the day, gameplay is what is necessary in a game. And having instant battles, your armies engage and then instantly the battle is over. Sure, realistic when you're looking at, 1 tick per day. But that simply forces players to use doom stacks. It forces it. Like, it is a mandatory tactic in games, which is not realistic. So adding a realistic feature, or improving the realisticism, whatever, of one element is forcing an unrealistic element in another area, which is obviously bad. And I think the realism of the second element is way more important, right? Forcing, multiple armies rather than one single colossal doom stack, I think is more realistic. Of course, there were times when having just one, sledgehammer army roaming around was the meta. Like Alexander's conquest, for example, he didn't have, 20 armies roaming around in Persia. He had one army that just did a bunch of battles and then, just one. But it's also just not fun to just have one army. Having multiple is better. And yeah, extrapolating from that, lowering the amount of time the battles takes, I don't think is very awesome, to put it strangely, because part of the skill expression of the game is timing reinforcements into battles, and that, I guess, made it a little bit harder if battles take less time. So maybe skill expression has jumped up a bit, by about 20%. But I do like the idea of unrealistic reinforcements over realistic instantaneousness. We're moving more towards realisticness, especially when we get to looking at what happens at higher speeds in the game. But yeah, we'll get on to that. So longest time span of any Paradox game and hours as smallest ticks. There should be free DLC as a reward for anyone who reaches the end date. So the key is to make the game fun and challenging during the 500 years. Sure, obviously, that is cookie cutter, obviousness. I don't think this is really answering the question that Aquila is asking here. Or is there not really a question, but his comment. How, if this game, if we play every single tick for, the length of time that we spend every day in EU4, then playing a full campaign of EU5 is going to take 10, 20 times as long. So realistically, that shouldn't and can't be the case. It literally can't. But yeah, there is ways to, mitigate that. A lot of the things that are simulated on each tick level. So things that happen at yearly ticks, things that happen at monthly ticks, things that happen at daily ticks, and things that happen at hourly ticks are different. So you can completely ignore the hourly tick if you are not fighting, for example, and your game will run just as fast as the other games in Paradox's library. Maybe not Vic 3, it's probably going to run significantly faster than that slog, but yeah, we're gonna be able to ignore the hourly ticks, which again, is that good? Are we, especially if we want to ignore them while we're at war? You can just speed 5 through, and battles will happen instantaneously. But is that a good thing? It's not something that I'm going to be doing. He said previously the battles will be more decisive now. I like the idea very much. Any info how it's done? More war score from battles, less cap on war score from battles. A lot of multiplayer mods do this anyway. A lot of multiplayer mods increase the cap on war score from battles to 50. I quite like that. And then obviously dead soldiers is dead people, which makes warfare way more deadly. Yeah. Way more deadly. Discipline and military tactics work like in EU4. They work pretty much the same. So discipline being a modifier on how much damage you deal and take. Military tactics being a modifier on how much damage you take. So those making a return, I don't see any problem with that whatsoever. How do stack wipes work? Do reinforcing armies get a penalty to initiative? So reinforcing armies end up with their regiments in the reserves box, which we have a thing here for. So this is the reserves box down here. So reinforcing armies end up down here. So the chance of actually joining the battle has another impact first as well. They don't just instantly join the front line, and they have a chance to join the front line. So if all of the people in the 3 sections are wiped out, even if you have reserves there, you've lost the battle, right? So whether that includes stack wipes, we don't really know. And then I might as well just go over this comment here. To summarize, we get CK3 system of sections, engaging in combat, and HOI4 reinforcing of combat. Something damage dealing with dice rolling, so EU4 Vic 2 stuff. Old EU4 combat with dependent on terrain. Yeah, all of that, good description. Keeping the core while adding things we know will improve it. That is exactly what you should do when you are making a sequel to a game that has warfare in it. Victoria. That's what you should do. That's what you should have done. Or you could kill your game, I don't know. Oh yeah, that's the comment I had there. I was hoping for something like this. Holy cow. I don't know how you can... It's so outside left field, outside the box. I'm not sure how you can really have expected it, but you know what? He did, so good for him. With ticks representing hours, you've also solved the weeks-long battle of earlier games. Who cared? I do not understand this cope. I really don't. It was fine. I didn't care that in the late game with lots and lots of troops, especially in multiplayer, I could reinforce from, a country away. People will massively, insanely, over-exaggerate and say from continents away, but no, just no. Unless you were in one of these giga wars in the late game, which are already unrealistic, so who cares? That just wasn't really the case, and in any case, just call it an abstraction. It really doesn't matter, and the over-exaggeration that people who never have been in those kinds of wars really, really shows. So if I wanted to model the reason why China didn't push as hard into firearms, since its regular combatants were steppe nomads in the north, with the use of firearm tactics were not all that especially effective, I just make the steppe nomad units have particularly high initiative for the time compared to early firearms. It doesn't seem all that unreasonable. Basically, yes. Early game horse archers have +5 to initiative. 20% combat power on grassland and sparse vegetation. I love this. This is basically the horde stuff from EU4, but this is just baked into how units fight nowadays, it looks like. And have 100 more men than other cavalry, so it keeps up in size even in the Age of Renaissance. So that's cool. That's awesome. I like that very much. Will Cav flanking ability modifier be any useful here? Because in EU4 it's not useful, especially in multiplayer, since both sides can pretty much all the time keep the front line full. Yeah, Cav were mainly useful for when your enemy started breaking. In multiplayer, I don't know how this happens, but it was quite frequent that even in battles with multiple hundreds of thousands of troops on each side, more than is really reasonable to expect, armies would break roughly at the same time. You'd both run out of troops at the same time, and you'd both have cannons starting to get onto the front line at the same time. And it would be kind of tetchy who ended up losing. Went down to the wire. Battles went down to the wire, even in the hundreds of thousands of troops, more often than one would expect. If you have some cavalry in your armies when that phase starts, you will win, because the cavalry flanking ability, when your enemy starts breaking and can't fill the front line, will be huge. Absolutely insane. That's basically the only reason when it mattered in multiplayer. Unless you had, 100% cavalry ratio, generally you wouldn't have cavalry at those late games either. So, how it's gonna work in EU5? Are we gonna have that be a more impactful modifier? Except for the time, a section has a problem, so it won't be useful except when that happens. But yes, it's not as powerful as it should be, and he has some ideas. So what kind of ideas they're going to be, we'll find out, I guess. This looks great. One question. Do regiment sizes for levies adjust automatically based on the province population, or are they fixed depending on things like region or tag? They all merge together as if they got recruited into standardized regiment sizes if they can fill them. Right. Unlike in Victoria 2, regiments do not have specific ties to locations, right? The men dying in regiment frickin' where we got here. The regiment, the units, the troops dying in the, find one, the Conan infantry here. They are not specifically from the, various locations, right? If these die, then they can be reinforced from other locations as well. It's not necessarily that it is so strictly tied to a place. And I don't know why my music keeps stopping. We're going to have a musicless dev diary. I don't know why that's happening. I apologize. Sorry, a bit of a tangent there. Like in Vic 2. Vic 2, every unit was directly tied to a location, so if that location ran out of soldier pops, that unit could no longer reinforce. And that's not going to be the case here. We got a little bit more of an abstraction there, but also I feel like a little bit more realistic. If your, Krakow regiment is depleted, it can be reinforced by people from Wroclaw. Probably could have chosen place names that are easier to pronounce, but whatever, we're rolling with it. So I think this is a little bit more realistic than the Vic 2 scenario, honestly. If the daylight hour ticks in Project Caesar are global while the nighttime hours are skipped, this means that the same time of day across the entire world. Does this mean Tinto secretly thinks the Earth is flat? No, it is a cylinder. There is no time zones. Australia is working on the same time as, Europe. It's just one of the abstractions of the game that is perfectly reasonable. He elaborates in a further comment, I'm not sure if I added it to my list of things to go over, that before the advent of, long-distance communication, telephones and such, it really did not matter if you were in different time zones, right? Like, if you go on Wikipedia and look at battles in, battles in China, say you look at an early morning battle that happened in China. Going on the European Wikipedia for that page, it's going to say, the 23rd of March. It's not going to say, well, because it happened on the 23rd of March in the early morning in China, but we were still in, late evening in Europe, therefore we are actually going to say that it happened on, the 22nd of March instead. They're not going to do that, of course. It doesn't matter. Battle happened on the 23rd of March. There was no global communication, no instant communication, so it doesn't make any difference that they're technically different days and technically different times. It's irrelevant. So, that's fine. Really sick, like a lot. Yeah, a lot of people really liking things. Will we be able to appoint commander in Merc's territories and have them lead puppet states after a certain war? This was a huge answer. You can create a new subject state from any province you own, and you should be able to make a specific person its ruler. That's huge. That's huge. Being able to reward characters with, doing good jobs with their own state increases the roleplay potential of this game, like, so high. And also you can drill regiments. You can't drill levies, but you can drill regular units. You can unlock that in your advances. Very cool. How long will battles take on average? Same amount of reinforced from far away like in EU4. Same amount of places, but not that continent away. I just didn't think that this was... I think this is an over-exaggeration. Like, you weren't reinforcing a battle in Normandy from, Constantinople. It just wasn't happening. Unless you got this huge late-game, unrealistically scaled war, it just wasn't happening. So I just don't understand the cope, honestly. But, you got a few locations away. I feel like it might either increase skill expression or, honestly, force us to doomstack just a little bit more than I would really like. It's the only gripe that I have about the game, if I'm being honest. So there's no more fire versus shock damage in the combat phases, so it means that gun-powered units behave the same as melee ones, or just that they have different stats. It's just better stats. Is there a difference between morale damage and actual damage based on a unit stats? Morale damage can make units break faster or slower, which have different impacts. Is there a limit of how many units, regiments, types of units, regiments there is in a flag? You can have as many as you want in a flank, but someone on the left flank will never be able to reinforce the right flank, so it's usually better to balance your army. What I can not surmise, what I can reasonably assume, I think, is that it might be a good way to fight that you make your center have units that are able to last. They're able to hold. They're able to, maybe not do as much damage, but they're able to, take punishment. They have shock damage received in EU4 terms. Morale damage received modifiers. They will just stand and fight, maybe not do too much damage, but they will hold for a long time. Whereas your really glass cannony heavy hitters, the ones that do the damage, put them on the flanks. So when you break the flanks, then they will, be able to go in on the center and do that extra damage there. I think that might be a method one could use to really optimize your armies. But you also have an auto balance, and that's probably fine in most cases. I did see some comments from people saying that this system is kind of useless. You just click the balance button and it's probably always going to be better. And, making very assertive comments on it. But I think there are definitely going to be ways that people can optimize their armies for the best possible outcome. And that's one that I just come up with on the fly. So, could be a thing. Are there any plans for a nice immersive graphical representation of the actual battle? Hell yes. One of the things that I complained about in my video was that this UI looked terrible. This UI is merely a where is it? I got a comment on that one. It is the amount of men inside of a battle. This is a tooltip. This is a tooltip. For a tooltip, it's fine. Right? I wasn't expecting images to be in tooltips at all. So the fact that we're getting images in tooltips is kind of huge. So I actually don't care anymore. This is fine for a tooltip, but we're getting actual proper, amazing, graphical art of battles, and that's exactly what I want. That is exactly what I want. Am I correct in assuming the 3 squares to the right of each regiment is their designated section? Yes, that's their section. It's something I wondered about as well. And just to go over what that is, that's these right here. If a reinforcing army joins the battle with the right flank, not join the left flank if it's collapsing due to an assignment, so it just gets assigned to the reserves, and then the reserves go where they're needed. Reserves don't care about flanking and such. They don't care about whether I've assigned a guy to left, right, or center sections. Looks amazing. Again, so many people saying this. Is there an option for a night attack? Nights do not exist. Are ambushes possible? Well, since some terrain block Fog of War, you can do it like that. I'm wondering if this means that Fog of War is extended to the province level, so higher than location level, for your armies, but then is blocked by terrain. I think that would be really cool, because having fog of war only to adjacent locations might be a little bit insane. And then talking about logistics and such, that will be next week. What determines the frontage of a regiment? One regiment is almost always costing 1 frontage each. Will there be any dice roll modifier penalties for attackers and defenders depending on vegetation and topography? Yes, we saw that earlier with the steppe cavalry getting bonuses. I think this is awesome. I like seeing that. I want to see it for more different types of units. I think cavalry of all shapes should do better on flat ground. Maybe spearmen could do better in choke point-y kind of terrain. Just things like that would be really cool. Does the winning side get anything like salvaged goods, like horses, weaponry, and prisoners? Yes, there are benefits to winning. Awesome. I want to capture my enemy's guns. I want to capture their cannons. That would be freaking amazing. I want to capture their supplies. That was something that I always expected to see in Imperata, and I was kind of sad that it never ended up materializing. I hope that this is what I assume it is. I really do. I think that would be freaking cool. One thing I'm a bit concerned about is it will not have access to artillery at all in 1337. Well, you can research the advances for the hoofness in the Age of Renaissance, so it'll be used a lot in the 100 Years' War. Fine. Drilling doesn't work like the experience mechanic in Victoria 2. Drilling is something you stack up while at peace, but that's irrelevant here because you get it from combat. Armies will get experience from fighting battles. So the more wars you fight, the more experience you get. Whether that is drained by casualties, and then I don't know. Is just being in the battle enough to gain experience, or do you actually have to fight? How is it determined on how many things you kill? I don't know. But we will, I guess, find out. I figured it out. It was Discord that was stopping the music from playing. It detected that I was transmitting audio and therefore stopped Spotify from playing. I don't know. I apologize, but it's back. God, this is going to be a scuff video. And we're only about halfway through the responses that I want to go through, which is crazy. A little confused about how frontage works in relation to regiment size. You mentioned levies and regiments can be raised in different sizes, but also each levy and regiment takes up an individual frontage slot. So trying to understand, does this mean I'm fighting an even more disadvantage against someone with big units if I have smaller units? Hypothetically, someone has 25 regiments, 1,000 men each. I have 250 regiments, 100 men each. Won't I just get slaughtered because my 100 men will keep going into the front to die at 1 to 10 odds, while the rest of the men sit in reserve waiting for their turn to perish? So yes, if your regiments are smaller, you are at a disadvantage. A levy of 1,000 men is comparable to a regular at 100, though. So this shows the effectiveness of the regular units through the ages, and we got a little graph here as well, which is kind of cool. I think the thing that really is interesting here is cavalry not gaining combat power throughout the game. It's still higher than infantry, but it's pretty cool. But then effectiveness. Infantry get much more effectiveness throughout the game rather than cavalry, and then the artillery just get absolutely crazy. This is also here. The artillery is also based on men. It's not based on the amount of guns. So this isn't 1,200 cannons. This is 1,200 people. For an amount of cannons that I don't know how many, but this is people. But yeah, it's kind of cool. I like the information. Will these mechanics be designed and balanced with competitive multiplayer in mind, or will the focus primarily be on the single-player experience? Ideally for both. Yeah, it is something that is somewhat worrying to me as a person who plays quite a lot of multiplayer. I will be a little bit worried, let's say, that the change for battles to be at a lower tick rate, so the hourly tick rate, means that we're either going to have to massively slow down the game when player wars start, which is probably where we're going to go with this, or just run at a slower speed and the games will last longer and people get bored if games last too long, and it is something that worries me for sure. But we will, we have some options on what we can do to mitigate that, I hope. We cannot force our armies to stay awake. There isn't a night tick. There isn't a night tick, so who cares? So the time ticks from 8 to 19 for the entire game, or just for army movement engagement. Only combat units and units tick at 8 to 19. The rest of the game ticks once per day. So if you're not fighting, you don't really have to care about it. Especially if you move it to speed 5, all of these ticks are done, instantly. The combat ticks, the hourly ticks are done instantly. You don't have to worry about it at all. So yeah, that's that. Does the game have a tick calculation setup similar to something like hour ticks, only for units, days, construction, recruitment, month, gain, income, calculate trade, rebel progress? Yes. That's how it works. Now that we have hours, this means that we have dice rolls every 3 hours, or hourly, like with the other checks that happen in combat, it's every 5 hours. Very cool, very fine. Values on Army Commander may need some workshopping. I'd value mill points at 2 to 1, even 3 to 1 on my commanders. So if we bring back this, he's talking about these. I'm not sure I would value it at that level. And I don't think Johan is either. If I move that over to where you can see both things, sure, close enough, I guess. It's not even the top 5 and the most OP values there. Admin impact on frontage will see the nerf back by at least 10. Basically allows you to have 100% more troops fighting an enemy if you got 100 skill to 0. That's what I was saying about possible frontage being a crazy modifier that needs nerfing. And yeah, it will be. Is the design intention of this new system to avoid a meta build? Well, yeah, of course. Hope they can avoid a meta that fits all. A meta will probably be found at some point. Like, that's just kind of inevitable. Whether that meta is worth pursuing is another question at all. If a meta this is clearly objectively the best, but it takes far too much effort, it takes far too much skill, it takes far too much of a bunch of things to achieve, then is it really the meta? At a certain point, something will be found, but I'm assuming, future updates will change it over time. Combat looks great. Will artillery stacks be damaged in the main phase since there's no back row? Yes. There is no front row, back row, so your cannons that do that bombard phase at the start will stay in the front lines in the various sections and take damage. Ouch. That's scary. I am used to EU4 where my cannons stay in the back row and do not take damage unless I screw up. I also use mods that make sure that they don't retreat from the back row like EU4 used to do. So my cannons taking damage scares me. Yeah. How probable are improbable outcomes? So can an underdog army manage to win in a battle because it was able to shatter the enemy's left flank early on? Random is random. Sure, I guess that can happen then. Is it feasible to have day ticks for speed 3 to 5 and hour ticks for speed 1 and 2? Speed 5 puts all into 1. I would like this to be an option though, right? Because I would like it to be the case that I can say I want my hour ticks to only occur when I'm at speed 1 and 2. I love that idea. And then only day ticks when we get to 3 and up. I think that would be a great option. And then especially I can have the game on speed 3 for multiplayer, and then if there is a player war, I can put it down to speed 2 so that you can micro your armies. When you're fighting the AI, I don't really care. You can have your instant battles. That's fine. But when you're in a player war, the ability to reinforce properly is way more heightened. So having the ability to, put it down so you can do that is good. This maybe could be an option. A few questions. Is Death or Alive the only two options for manpower and population, or is there some kind of wounded mechanic? Yes. Though he does elaborate further on that maybe that might not be a final answer. There was some discussion about it, about adding a wounded mechanic, and Johan did seem to be somewhat receptive to it, so potentially that could be coming. Could certain cavalry, and general traits give an option for a super quick attack? If they have high initiative, basically just go with the initiative modifier. How are armies without generals? They are far worse. Replacing generals also has a cooldown, so no teleporting generals across the map because you can. It does have a cooldown. That's kind of cool. Why not have 12 dicks for the whole... 12 dicks? Okay, bit of a Freudian slip there. No, it wasn't. It was let's move on. Why not have 12 ticks for the whole day? Every tick being 2 hours, because nights are for sleeping. Yeah, the night doesn't exist. Don't worry about it. If the left flank can never reinforce your right flank if it wins its section, does that mean you can hypothetically have a situation where you win the left, lose the right, and the middle for both sides is broken and dead, leaving the two sections staring at each other? They will fight each other then. Okay, cool. Are mercenaries linked to pops as well? No, but when they are created, they remove pops. Kind of cool. And can you move, moving armies on the map is shift-click the path. Same as all other Grand Strategy games. Tacit admission that Johan does not believe that Victoria 3 is a Grand Strategy game. That's a joke. Don't worry. Don't read into that. Don't read into that. Do we have the ability to manually control units? Of course. I love that, like, the idea of not being able to is just so foreign that it just doesn't even come into the equation. Like, why would you possibly think otherwise? Of course you can. Crazy thought. Army cycling is skill expression. Army cycling is Victoria 2. It is not just reinforcing at the right time, right? Delayed reinforcing so that your reinforcements don't get morale damage. That is not army cycling. Army cycling is a Victoria 2 mechanic that required morale to not be a thing, right? Army cycling is when you check all of the various different army stacks that are in a battle, take out stacks that are depleted, retreat them one square, one tile, one location, get a monthly tick, that reinforces, and then put that army back in the battle. That is army cycling, and it's only possible in EU4 if you're playing Anbenar and you're playing with Undead Army, because they don't have morale. It doesn't work for EU4. But it is absolutely skill expression. 100%. It is skill expression. If you learn how to do this properly, then you are going to be able to win in Victoria 2 multiplayer. It can be considered sending in reserves, and it's certainly more interesting than jamming your 500k stack into one province and waiting for the stat check. I agree with this. I think he could have said army cycling and / proper reinforcing is skill expression. But yeah, it is more interesting than having doom stacks, which is something that I think this system might be encouraging a little too much. Johan seems to agree, of course, that, skill expression is important. And more interesting than just doom stacking. The fact that 10 people disagree with this is actually blowing my mind. People wanting doom stacks? Fuck's wrong with you? The people who... I'm gonna rip on Vic 3 here a second. Don't worry about it. I'm actually ripping on the Vic 3 lovers, whatever. People who defend Victoria 3's warfare system often point at EU4 and say, "Oh, it's just a modifiers game, and therefore the only way to play is, you have your big doom stack, your enemy's big doom stack, you smash your doom stacks together, and then the winner is the one with the better modifiers, the bigger doom stack." And that is their cope, and how they pretend that EU4's warfare works, so that they can pretend that their own warfare system is remotely acceptable, which it isn't, right? And that's how they pretend that EU4 warfare works, when it isn't. That's not how it works at all. As somebody who's played 8,500 hours of the game, over 2,000 of that probably in multiplayer, that's just not how that works. And it kind of seems here that a bunch of people think that this is how it works, or that it's good. I don't understand. I don't understand at all. Someone explain to me why this is disagreeing with. Do they think that this is fun? just Doomstack. Just Doomstack. Sure. No, thank you. I feel like combat power is like land and shock. Land, fire and shock pips in EU4. Yeah, sure. Levies will have about 1/10 of the effectiveness of regulars. Also, yes. So, yeah, that's basically it. Combat power is like pips. Fine by me. Please tell me you reworked the levy system from May Tinto talks where you talked about it, because otherwise it would mean that Poland now has somehow less population than Sweden, 661,000. Since then, in that Tinto talk, there was a screenshot of Sweden being able to raise 12,000 men with their levies. Basically, Poland has less control, as they don't have any sort of roads or such infrastructure built up, while 66% of Sweden's main population centre is around the waterways near Stockholm. So control really impacting the amount of levies you're able to raise to, quite a huge degree, which is, That's cool. I like it. But moving on. Will battles give unit experience? Yes, it will. To have realistic numbers, can artillery regiments scale from something like 5, 10, blah, 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 blah? Because scaling from a realistic 10 cannon regiment to 1,200 feels absurd. It's not. Those are men. Those are men. There are 10 men, 1,200 men. It's men. Regiments are counted in men. It's pops that are in them and die, not the guns. Different times have different crew required, but usually it varies between 6 and 10. And then you have the support and leaders, etc. 10 at the start is basically a single cannon. Yes, makes sense. This is tangentially related to last week's topic, but how many characters can we have on average? Are we going to be able to run out? Is a shortage to be expected? Yes, sometimes. I don't know if I like it. I don't know if I like that. I would like the ability to just spawn new characters, because running out of characters in Imperator, it fucking sucked. It just did. I don't want to run out of characters. I don't want to ever have a shortage. It's just not. It's not a fun. It's not fun. So yes, let me spawn characters out of thin air, please. Does the fact that bombards and artillery start at the beginning mean they won't be firing through the rest of the battles, as was historical? This is something that I was worried about. We're having this bombard phase, and is that the end of the cannons' impact on the battle? But no, they will continue fighting during the rest of the battle. Sorry to harp on this, but can we get some clarification on what the EU4 or Imperator-like performance means? Are we talking on a per tick basis per day? Basically, Johan said that the performance, just by having all those extra ticks, just by having all those extra provinces, just by having all those extra everything, the increased complexity, just the game it is more, right? But it will perform at around about the same rate as EU4 Imperator. Whether that is EU4 Imperator in 1444 or 302 BCE, or 450, whatever the Imperator thing is called. Ab Urbe Condita, I think. I don't know. But either way, whether that is performance at the start of the game or end game, which definitely varies massively, is unknown. But basically, when he was saying that it performs about the same, he meant on the month, right? A month in EU5 will take about the same time as a month in Imperator or a month in EU4. He's not talking about ticks, because of course there is going to be 360 ticks in a month for EU5. So that's like a year. So a month is not going to take a year. That kind of way. That's not what he was saying. So yeah, this is good information, because I know that Red Hawk was also worried about this, very much so on Twitter and also on the Parabellum livestream. But this is good information for someone like him, and everyone, I guess. The benefits to forcing enemies to flank to retreat before the end of a battle. It attacks the center with flanking ability as a damage bonus. So cavalry on the flanks seems like a very good idea, because they're the ones that are going to have the highest flanking ability. Hoping to have the system from Imperator which slows the game down to speed 1 or 2 when a battle begins. I hated this. This annoyed me so much, but I feel like I kind of might be wanting it here. Make it possible to be on speed 4 or 5 while fighting a war without the fear of losing battles. So, game speed when war starts, you can change it. Game speed when a selected unit enters combat, you can change it. More options, please. Game speed that makes hourly ticks instantaneous. Let me be able to change that. Give me more options. Give me all of the options, because options are great. Options are fantastic. Is Cav infantry ratio a thing? No, it is not. In regards to number 2, does that mean the AI isn't omniscient anymore? In theory, yes. I would love if AI was not omniscient. And let me see what his number 2 meant. Oh, train blocking fog of war. Makes sense. The AI is omniscient in EU4, and you could definitely notice this when you are, an enemy is sieging a province. They're doing pretty well. Maybe they've got, several siege ticks in, and you bring an army from, the opposite side of your country to go and attack it. The AI is objectively incapable of seeing that unit, but they see that unit, and they move their army off the siege because they know they will lose if they stay there. I hate that. I hate that so much. It infuriates me. It's one of the biggest things about EU4 that annoys me. Gameplay wise, not mechanically wise, that's development and mana, but I hate that in EU4. So I hope he's right, and that in theory, the AI won't be omniscient. I hope it won't be. Really, really a lot. Do the nations have terrain combat bonuses due to knowledge of home territory? So Vietnamese troops being better in jungles, Cossacks better in the steppes. Some units have. Not everything, but some do. Cool. I like it. If one army alpha arrives in 11 o'clock in Stockholm and the enemy army is already there, at speed 5, we will see the alpha in Stockholm at 1900, but a battle would have started with the equivalent of 8 hours of battle. Yes, it's all simulated instantly. So each tick is simulated. So it's not like, those ticks are being skipped. But it's going to be happening instantly, so you don't, your game won't slow down for it, basically. You never know, it could have been going on a bold plan where objective's the only way to control your armies. I don't know why you would, but you could have. Yeah, don't find it fun. Don't find it fun. I had a idea when Imperator was still a thing that I played quite a bit, to do a campaign as the Romans, where the only army I would control would be the levy raised from Rome. And every other army would be controlled by AI. And I gave up on that idea because the AI that controlled armies was dumb as shit. They were very incapable of understanding that another unit existed. For example, if I put 2 armies on automatic independent control, they would go and siege the same province and take massive attrition casualties. It just wasn't very good. So I never did it. And making it so that, you can't control your armies is a moronic idea, Victoria. It's not fun. Player agency is 100% important. It's the most important thing. When it comes to a warfare system. Player agency is massive. And there is obviously a lot of cope around, but this is not the part of the game that wants to be simulated. You wouldn't have control as the ruler, but that is cope because you're not playing as the ruler. You're playing the spirit of the nation in every Paradox game except CK3, because you're playing as the spirit of a dynasty there. So yeah, there's no plan to ever remove player control over armies because Johan is a proper Paradox dev that, has players' agency in mind, which is great. Massive W for the top secret project. Glad we're not going for the same direction as CK, opting for simplicity in combat. And it's not only CK. I thought they made it more complex than any previous game not in the Hearts of Iron series. I didn't play Hearts of Iron 3, but I have heard from many people that it lost complexity going into Hearts of Iron 4, and then as updates to Hearts of Iron 4 kept going, that complexity was slowly re-added back in. I don't know if it's back up to the same level as Hoi 3. Again, never played it, and I'm not a Hoi 4 player, but that's what I've heard. But yeah, every game, combat in Vic 3 is shit. More simple than Vic 2. Combat in CK3 is more simple than CK2. Combat in EU5 looks like it's more complex than EU4, and that's cool. That's awesome. Going in the opposite direction is a good thing in this case, in my opinion. How will the tick system work in multiplayer? It'd be weird for the game to slow down for me when I'm at peace just because my friend decides to chain war all the time. So the host decides what speed to run on. I mean, sure. But someone saying, by the way, I'm going to play a war. Could you slow the game down? I mean, I suppose that's probably going to be the way it has to work. For me personally, there is so much to do in a game, even at peace, that you go speed 3 anyway if you can't pause, which is fine. That's fair enough. I like that. I don't want the game to encourage speed 5 gameplay 100% of the time, because it kind of just looks janky and it's less fun for me. Speed 4 is my happy place, but if there's enough going on in the game that speed 3 is the right way to go, then that's awesome. That is an improvement. To reduce micromanagement and player skill advantage, can the reserves take less of a morale hit than the other 3 sections? No, of course not. That's fucking stupid. This is encouraging doom stacking as the only viable method of warfare. If you remove or reduce the amount of morale damage reserves take, then you encourage doom stacking, and that is bad. That is bad. It's a lack of, again, reduce player skill advantage. Get good. Just get good. Just get good. Is there a regiment upgrade mechanic, or can we expect it to delete old regiments and build new ones? Yes, you can upgrade an army all at once for a cost. It will change applicable regiments to a better regiment in the same category. Morale and experience is set to 0, and it's, you still need to reinforce the new size. This is interesting because then it means that you are, say you got a lot of experience on these units. Do I upgrade them to the new, flashy, fancy new armor and weapons and shit with 0 experience? Or do I keep the army as it is? Which is better? I imagine in some cases, keeping it as it is might be better. Not in all cases. But in some cases, it might be. I don't know. It depends on how big jumps, these advances are going to be. We'll find out. Is adding more manpower types beside manpower and sailors possible through mods? This is huge to me. The fact that it's not a direct instant no gives me so much hope. Maybe people are really crafty when it comes to making mods. I hope the Anbanar team is looking at this. I hope they are the crafty people. I hope they get a guy to talk to Tinto and say, look, this is what we need. This is what we want for Anbanar. Because imagine manpower not being just a global amount for a country. Imagine manpower being per species. I should say, if people don't know what Anbanar is, because these videos are not. This isn't Anbanar specific, and Anbanar is something that I do quite a lot, but is not related to EU5. So people who watch these might not know what that is. Anbanar is a fantasy mod that takes a lot from D&D. So you have your elves, your dwarves, your gnomes, your orcs, goblins, etc. So when I'm thinking about Anbanar here, having, human manpower, elven manpower, goblin manpower, so that you can build units based on those individual types of manpower and reinforce from those individual types of manpower would be freaking huge. That would be so colossally amazing for that mod's future. I really hope they figure out how to make this, because I love Anbanar. It is my favorite mod of all time, and if this is possible, god damn, that's huge. It's so unbelievably huge. And finally, could add an option that slows the game speed down only when 2-player armies enter combat with each other for using multiplayer. As a multiplayer option, it's a good idea. Adding to the to-do. Awesome! Love this! Love this! Luperdie. Amazing. Luperdie also made a thread where he was a little bit worried and expressed some of the same worries that I have about the game in multiplayer, which I guess I can probably pull up real fast. And I do think that he's right in this. 12 times as many ticks per day in a longer time span, disparity between peacetime pacing and wartime pacing will increase a lot, as Johan hinted in the last Tinto talks. People who don't play multiplayer, people who play multiplayer, people who don't, people who do. This is just a fact. This is just a fact. It is just a fact. People kept complaining about battles being too long in EU4 because it was unrealistic, but there's nothing wrong with them from a gameplay perspective. 100% agree. I 100% agree. I don't care if you think it was unrealistic. It made sense for the game. It just did. It just did, and I don't care that you disagree. But yeah, he had some thoughts about, multiplayer. I do too. I would very much like it if this ends up, more multiplayer options to make it better for us who play multiplayer, of course. But that's all I have time for this, this massive amount of comments and responses. Absolutely prolific. Johan did a phenomenal job in responding to the community this week. And there was also, I messaged him right before I started making this video saying, could you make the Saturday building come out a little bit earlier? Because I would like to put it onto this video. And he did. And he did. This came out 38 minutes ago, bearing in mind we've been recording for an hour. I love this man. This man is fucking amazing. So yeah, we got the irrigation, which gives some population capacity, some food capacity, and it requires some metalworks. Very cool. Very nice. Nothing to complain about here. Love me some irrigation. Pop capacity plus 1,000. I hope that this is not going to fall into the mega cities problem, which is a huge problem in Imperator. It was. I'm not sure if it is anymore. I hated aqueducts. I hope irrigation doesn't act like an aqueduct. I really hope so. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed today's video. Let's have a look some more some hussars. This is one of the longest videos I've made, and we only looked at one Dev Diaries responses. There is a reason I didn't go into the Germany responses now. I'm going to do that tomorrow. So if you want to see that, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell button, and you know, you'll be able to see my video tomorrow on the responses from Pavia and Co. on the Germany map post. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you then. Toodaloo.